What is science? What is religion? Are they two totally unique disciplines, or is there more to this question than meets the eye?
Hey, my name is Justin Geyer. Here at Bard College, one may enjoy an evening service at this chapel after a long day of biology research at the nearby RKC. Here, we interview many distinguished Bard faculty members, top figures in their own fields. Some are scientists, some are theologians, and some are a little of both. This is an attempt to investigate the various facets of the exceedingly complex question of science and religion, and to inspire discussion over what their relationship yet may be. We begin by asking our participants two simple, yet indeed essential questions to this debate. What is science? And what is religion?
Science. I would define science as a particular way of trying to understand the world. It's a way that has to do with always being open to revision, with always being skeptical, always testing your ideas.
It is the exploration of the material world, as it were, based on empirical observation, for which there's at least the theoretical possibility of universal agreement. Theoretically, the observations and the results can be duplicated by anyone. The interpretation of the results is sometimes controversial, but I suppose one more thing to be said is that science is not terribly authoritarian. We like nothing better than a new theory that completely overturns some previous cherished theory, because that's really exciting when that happens. It doesn't happen very often.
I would say that science is the human pursuit of knowledge about what the world is and how it works. And by the world, I mean anything from the subatomic level of the world to the supergalactic level of the universe. So science's questions are about what happens and how it happens in the world. And religion is the human search for knowledge about I would say about meaning in the world, about why things happen and what their significance is.
It's a system of beliefs that is frequently encoded in some text of one sort or another. A Bible, a Quran, Bhagavad Gita, that exemplifies or amplifies the beliefs of a particular religion. Some religions, not all, have an authoritarian structure. Roman Catholics have the Pope, for example, who essentially can define what Roman Catholics believe. Other religions are far more disorganized.
It's partly about the beliefs, but it's partly about a commitment to taking hard questions seriously and thinking about our place in the universe and what it means to live a good life and how people should treat each other. But the older I get, the more I think it's really less about the specifics of a particular creed, and it's much more about an openness to asking questions and a willingness to put aside cynicism.
And so religion obviously doesn't have to have as wide agreement as science has. But its range of topics can be much broader because you don't even necessarily need any agreed upon factual statement. Mm-hmm. If I say, I can have a whole religion about the spirit of a person, and people may disagree that the spirit of a person even exists. You could have you have a group of people who perform a certain ritual, and there may be no theology behind it, and some groups may have sort of interesting theological statements which sound like scientific statements but are not as widely agreed upon or don't have the same ontological foundations.
And you'll notice that neither in my definition of religion nor in my definition of science did I say how they operate, because I think for me personally, although I realize not for most people, they both operate the same way. We have a certain set of human faculties, of human thinking, reasoning faculties, that for me work across all branches of human knowledge, whether they are religious or scientific or artistic. Those faculties involve our ability to look at the world, make observations, and draw conclusions based on observations. That's normally called scientific reasoning, but I think it's just human reasoning.
So I guess the first thing I would say at the outset is one of the things that people don't realize is involved in science and always assume is involved in religion is the notion of belief. And so we assume that through objective methods we're able to access some sort of concrete assessment of the real. Whereas when we engage in religious practice, we're being guided by a belief that isn't attested by reality. And I would refer to the work of a scholar named Norman Malcolm, who discusses the groundlessness of belief. And so specifically in this relationship between science and religion, and how even in scientific practice, we are guided by belief. And we're guided by belief in the sense that we have faith that the techniques that we're using will produce an objectively verifiable product, and that the questions that we're asking are the right questions.
I got into this business of science and study of science and religion by a screaming accident. I started out my grade school career back in the 50s, where the discussion in the schools was very careful to avoid certain topics. They were sex, politics, and religion. One didn't discuss that in public with people because it upset people. And so I never got any sense that these areas were of interest or should be of interest to a burgeoning curiosity person. But science wasn't, there's nothing about sex or religion or politics in it, so you could do science and everybody would talk about it, and it's fine, as long as you kept it separate. You go to sort of T.S. Kuhn's argument is, science is what scientists do, and religion is what religionists do, what the faithful do. Now, the next question is, what do they do? And so you get into what does scientists do? Well, they used to do other things. Now, you go back in history, what did scientists do? And what did the faithful do? You find that they did lots of things that were similar. A lot of things were identical. That is, there's in the Renaissance, there was a huge interest in catastrophes, weather, storms, lightning, floods, all having to do with physical world, earthquake, earth moving, rain, lightning, and the moral world. Why? Why are we suffering from plagues and storms? Concern about the physical world and how one might conduct oneself safely through it, and the moral world, as religions, how one might conduct safely through the moral world, and a connection again through Kant, through other people about such things as why bother to investigate the planets? Well, because it seemed to be virtuous. A good proof or a good explanation or a good piece of information and a good act and a good deed and a good marriage, the good seem to be related. And how those relations develop seem to be the discussion between science and religion. Now, so when you say define science and define religion, I would not. I would say, well, here's what scientists do. Here's what religionists do. What are the similarities and what are the differences?
I'm very attracted by the idea of Stephen Jay Gould that science and religion are what he called non-overlapping magisteria. That
I tend to subscribe to Stephen Jay Gould's non-overlapping magisteria theory. And what he would suggest is that science deals with the material world, religion deals with moral and ethical values. Science does not deal with moral and ethical values. And religion should not deal with the real world, the material world.
Now, he said there's no overlap, but that the difficulties arise when the two areas sort of abut each other. I'm not so sure that they never overlap, actually. I think sometimes there are questions that both science and religion can address, or at least can address different aspects of, and I think that's one place where difficulties arise.
Since then, it's been heavily criticized, and the suggestion has been made that, particularly in this direction, that many religions poach on the territory of science, as it were.
Most people in the world today see science and religion as competitors in a zero-sum game, meaning that when one wins, the other has to lose. Either science wins, in which case religion loses, or religion wins, in which case science loses. I don't agree with that. I think, as I said, that religion and science ask two different kinds of questions, but the people asking them, the self that asks those two kinds of questions, it's the same self, it's the same me, it's the same brain. So for me personally, religious belief can't conflict with scientific knowledge. They inform each other. My scientific knowledge informs my religious belief, and my religious belief shapes the way I view the practice of science.
And I think you'll find all the time in history and religion and culture and things like that, areas where people in religion have taken something which is now they see as being sort of accepted in the scientific community and applying that in some religious sense, sometimes more literally, sometimes more metaphorically. Going the other way, I think there's lots of cases, religion, insofar as it's about ideas as well, or people have different concepts about how things fit together, which just thinking about that in general and developing their mental processes for arguments has informed their scientific views as well. And maybe more often, I think it's motivated people. I mean, there's an incredible number of scientists who've been motivated by the idea that, for example, they're religious and their idea is that my job is to study and understand God's creation, and this is a sort of high calling for me to do, and that's what gets them up in the morning.
It seems to be the way they go about this, the way they go about worshiping, praying, rituals, ceremonies, following rules, and the way the scientists go about experiments and methods and following the rules are, if not identical, at least cousins. And then there's a sense of, in engaging in sciencing and engaging in worship, one apparently has a sense of spirituality, a sense of fear, the vengeful God or the plague, a sense of awe of the incredible connections in nature, or the powers of nature, or sex, or the heavens, and the kind of awe that comes about with considering the forces beyond our own that are more important and less accessible, that are involved in the way in the human condition.
Looking at the night sky, or learning about cosmology, or learning about how cells work in our bodies or learning about evolution is an experience that makes me say, wow. And that wow is for me a deeply religious statement. Jewish tradition has lots of different vernacular ways of saying wow. They are often couched in blessings, but it all basically comes down to wow. It's hard to look out at the night sky, especially if you've ever gone camping in the desert, where there's very, very dry air and the stars, and there's very little light around. It's hard to look up at the sky and not feel very small and not feel as if there is a huge, huge universe out there. So I think science and scientific pursuit are absolutely part of what I would call small r religious life, meaning not the ritual of synagogue or church or mosque, but the spirituality and inspirational life of human beings.